Do you feel as though justice has been served today?
Well, a whole life term, of course, was the only possible sentence that could have been handed down because these crimes were so horrific. There was such a pattern of behaviour. And, of course, a tiny baby, a newborn baby, is a precious thing. It's a gift. It's a gift to parents. It's a gift to any siblings. It's a gift to the world. And for somebody to be so wicked, to snuff out so many young, precious lives in the vicious, wicked way that she did, there could only, of course, be one sentence. And I'm glad that that was handed down and that she will, of course, die in jail. There is, though, one very important point that I'd like to raise, if I may, and that is that Lucy Letby is not allowed, under any circumstances, to take her own life, because there have been notorious killers in the past, Harold Shipman, Fred West, and others, who have not been able to face the consequences of their own actions and have not been able to deal with a whole life term. So what they've done is taken their own lives. The prison service must be on red alert to ensure that Lucy Letby serves until her own natural causes dying day.
OK, and how does that happen then? Does she have to have regular checks? Does someone have to be continually watching her? How does that work in practice?
Absolutely. She can't have bed linen, for example, that could be shredded into strips and then made into a noose. She can't have crockery or cutlery of any description that could be adapted into a weapon with which she could self-harm and take her own life. Yeah, things like that. Very practical things that many in the prison service are used to doing. It's quite a regular thing with regards to some prisoners who are on suicide watch, but I just urge them to be extremely careful, because it wouldn't be justice if Letby is allowed to take her own life.
No, it absolutely wouldn't be. And the other thing I think that is important as well, for a lot of people, I know this has got a lot of people going, and we are doing a campaign in this, which I'm going to be giving you the kind of full blow-by-blow account of at the top of the next hour. But this is about cowardly, evil killers, OK? And other violent offenders. We're talking about rapists, we're talking about attempted murderers, we're just talking about complete and utter monsters who currently are able to sit in their cell whilst the victim impact statements are being read out to them and whilst the sentence is being handed down to them. This is becoming an increasingly popular thing for them to do.
Yep.
It's got to be stopped. I know there are practical issues at play here, but we've got this campaign. I mean, would you back the campaign? Where are you on it?
I completely and utterly agree with you in that cowardly, vile criminals should be in court to hear those impact statements and to be handed down their sentence. Letby today has joined an increasing list of such vile cowards by not going into that court. However, there are practical challenges here.
Yep.
If somebody physically will not go into that court, then what do the authorities do? Do they shackle them? Do they force them into a straitjacket?
Yeah.
Do they apply a gag so they can't speak? How are they going to do that? And I'm sure you can imagine how human rights lawyers would love to jump onto any such legislation. And I personally don't want to see human rights lawyers getting any richer.
No, I absolutely don't. You're right to mention that, because this is one of the controversial aspects of this. From my perspective, yes, they absolutely should be dragged there. And at the moment, prison officers are allowed to use, quotes, reasonable force. The problem is, as you've rightly identified, that prison officers themselves don't want to risk getting done for crossing that very grey area of what was reasonable and what was not, which is really why we need a proper change in the law, a law that backs our prison officers so that they can go out there and properly enforce justice and get people in that dock.
And nor do we want prison officers injured.
Yep.
They have an incredibly difficult job to do, and the majority of them do that job very, very well for not much reward, I hasten to add. I think prison officers should get a pay rise for the work they do. They look after the very worst of humanity and endeavour to maintain order in our jails. A very, very challenging thing that they do.
No, indeed. And I think at the very least, what should happen is that the victim impact statements and the judge's verdict, sentence, is actually played out to them. I've got a couple of little snapshots of some of the victim impact statements from Lucy Letby's victims' parents. One mother said, even in these final days of the trial, she tried to control things. The disrespect that she has shown the families and the court show what type of person she is. We have attended court every single day in, day out, yet she decides she has had enough and stays in her cell. Just one final act of wickedness from a coward. And that is the person whose side I'm on. That is the person whose side I'm on here at GB News. That's why I want people to go to gbnews.com/justice now and see if we can desperately try to get some kind of change in the law that means that people like Lucy Letby have to go and hear the impact of their statements. And at the very least, it should be pumped into their cell.
Undoubtedly, again, I agree if that were to be an option, but let's look at the practicalities of it. We know when we stand in lifts sometimes, they pump music into the lift and there's no speakers to see, so that technically can be done quite easily. But if, for example, they have to be shackled in their cell so that they cannot put their fingers in their ears, which some would seek to do, I'm sure, then, of course, we've got to make it a padded cell because they may seek to self-harm themselves by banging their heads against the walls, for example. And prisoners do these kind of things. So the practicalities really do have to be thought out in order for the wicked, vile, cowardly killers to face the consequences.
And why is it so important that they do face the consequences? Why is it so important, do you think, that the victims and their relatives have the ability to actually know that the person who's committed those crimes can hear the impact that that has had on their lives? Why is it so important that when a judge says you've got a whole life tariff, you've got a minimum of 36 years or whatever, that that person needs to hear that? Why does it matter?
Because it's the loved ones of victims that get the life sentence. They have to spend the rest of their lives with the loss of that baby so brutally murdered. And it goes for parents and other people, all those hundreds of people every year that lose loved ones to murder. I'm all about the victims, whether it be the first victims, the babies, the secondary victims, their parents. I'm all for them. I think we should have a victims' law as well, so their rights are enshrined on the statute book. And most definitely, it's for those people, those people who have acted with such dignity throughout this very long trial. Letby should have heard their voices.
Letby should have heard their voices, and the reason why I care so passionately about this is I've sat in this very chair and reported on other cases in the last few months, in the last year, where those criminals have also not attended court. We've had Thomas Cashman. He shot and killed 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell in her own home. No remorse, nothing. That guy couldn't care less. It just makes me feel sick.